Before Amazon destroyed retail, retail destroyed itself. 15 department store empires that seemed too big to fail vanished completely. And the real reason why will make you question everything you think you know about business. The year was 1879, and Frank Woolworth had a wild idea. What if he sold everything for just 5 or 10 cents? His friends thought he'd lost his mind. Who makes money selling things that cheap? Well, Frank did. Big time. Within decades, Woolworths grew from one tiny store to over 2,000 locations across America. The red and gold signs became as familiar as stop signs. But here's what made Woolworths special. It wasn't just about cheap stuff. It was about the experience. Walk into any Woolworths and your senses got hit immediately. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with candy. Kids pressed their noses against glass cases filled with penny toys. Their lunch counters? Legendary. You could get a slice of pie and coffee for pocket change, served by waitresses who knew your name. The toy aisles were pure magic. Wooden trains, dolly carriages, marbles that sparkled like diamonds. Everything priced so parents couldn't say no. Smart, right? Then there's the weird part. For 118 years, this empire seemed unstoppable. But by 1997, every single American Woolworths had closed forever. What happened? The same discount idea that made Frank rich eventually killed his creation. Walmart and Target played his own game, but bigger, faster, and cheaper. But Woolworths wasn't the only retail giant that seemed invincible until it wasn't. While Woolworths shoppers browsed store aisles, another retail revolution was quietly happening through America's mailboxes. Montgomery Ward didn't just sell products, they delivered dreams right to your doorstep. Aaron Montgomery Ward opened his first store in Chicago back in 1872. But here's the kicker. Most customers never actually stepped foot inside. Instead, they flipped through massive catalogs that became known as wish books. These weren't your typical pamphlets either. We're talking about 500-page monsters packed with everything from bicycles to bedroom furniture, farm tools to fancy dresses. Picture this. A family in rural Kansas could order the same merchandise available in big city stores without leaving their kitchen table. The catalog made Ward's a household name across America, especially in small towns where shopping options were pretty limited. Kids would circle their Christmas wishes in red crayon while parents planned major purchases months ahead. But Ward's biggest mistake? They got comfortable. While competitors embraced shopping malls and eventually online retail, Montgomery Ward stuck too long with their old catalog model. Makes sense why they struggled, right? By 2001, after 129 years in business, they filed for bankruptcy and closed their retail stores. Well, Ward's wasn't the only retail giant making headlines with flashy parades and fierce competition. While Montgomery Ward ruled the catalog world, another retail giant was making headlines in a completely different way. Gimbels didn't just sell merchandise, they sold spectacle. Founded in 1887 by 7 Gimbel brothers, this department store chain grew from a single location to 36 stores at its peak. But here's what made them special. They turned shopping into entertainment. Every November, thousands of families would line the streets of New York City to watch Gimbel's annual Thanksgiving Day parade. Sound familiar? Well, that's because Macy's eventually took over parade duties, but Gimbel's started the whole tradition. The real magic happened in their bargain basements. Shoppers would practically sprint down those stairs hunting for deals. We're talking designer clothes marked down 70%, furniture sold at cost, and electronics that other stores couldn't match. The basement buzz was legendary. Then there was the rivalry. Gimbels versus Macy's became the stuff of retail legend, making newspaper headlines for decades. They'd steal each other's employees, copy advertising campaigns, and even open stores directly across from each other. The competition got so intense that "Does Macy's tell Gimbels" became a popular saying, meaning companies don't share secrets with competitors. Despite all the showmanship and smart marketing, Gimbels couldn't survive the changing retail landscape. They closed their doors in 1987, but their impact on American shopping culture runs deeper than most people realize. While Gimbels battled Macy's in New York, Chicago had its own retail royalty. Marshall Fields didn't just sell merchandise, they created an empire of elegance that made shopping feel like entering a palace. The State Street flagship store opened in 1892 and quickly became one of the largest department stores in the world. We're talking massive here. 9 floors of pure retail magic, complete with a stunning Tiffany dome that still takes your breath away today. Fields understood something most stores missed. Atmosphere sells just as much as products. But here's where it gets interesting. Marshall Fields practically invented customer service as we know it. Their motto? Give the lady what she wants. Revolutionary thinking for the 1890s, right? They offered free delivery, generous return policies, and personal shopping assistance when other stores barely acknowledged customers existed. Then there were those Frango mints. Pure genius in chocolate form. Every holiday season, Chicago families would make pilgrimages to Fields just for those signature green boxes. The mints became so legendary that people still hunt for them online decades later. Fields also pioneered the department store restaurant concept, complete with white tablecloths and proper silverware. Shopping wasn't just errands anymore, it was an event. Well, that golden era couldn't last forever. When Macy's swooped in during 2006 and slapped their name on every Fields location, loyal customers felt betrayed. But retail transformation was just getting started in the Midwest. While department stores like Marshall Fields were busy being fancy, Hill's department store took a different approach. They opened their first location in 1957 in Ohio with a simple mission: give families what they actually need without breaking the bank. Hill's wasn't trying to impress anyone with marble floors or crystal chandeliers. Instead, they focused on practical stuff that made suburban life easier. Need Halloween costumes for 3 kids? Hill's had you covered. Looking for toys that wouldn't cost a month's salary? Their toy department was legendary among parents who knew where to find the good deals. But here's what made Hill's special: that little snack bar tucked inside every store. Fresh popcorn and colorful slushies became the reward for kids who behaved during shopping trips. Smart move, right? Parents could browse longer while kids enjoyed their treats. The chain grew fast, reaching over 200 stores across the Midwest. Families made Hill's their weekend destination, especially during back-to-school season. The wide aisles and no-frills approach worked perfectly for busy parents juggling soccer practices and grocery lists. Then the retail landscape shifted. Big discount giants started moving in, offering even lower prices and massive selection under one roof. Hill's tried to compete, but eventually sold to Ames in 1999. Both chains collapsed by 2002, leaving behind empty strip mall spaces and memories of simpler shopping days. Speaking of chains that couldn't survive the discount store invasion, while Hill's was struggling in the Midwest, California had its own retail darling that families couldn't resist. Mervyn's opened its first store in 1949, and boy, did it know how to make shopping feel like a treasure hunt. The magic happened every August when back-to-school season kicked into high gear. Parents would drag their kids through those wide aisles, hunting for jeans that actually fit and sneakers that wouldn't fall apart by October. Mervyn's made it work by focusing on practical fashion. Nothing too fancy, nothing too cheap, just solid clothes that could survive a typical American family. What made Mervyn's different? They understood that most people weren't looking for designer labels. They wanted a decent sweater for $15, not $50. The store felt comfortable, like shopping at a friend's house where everything was reasonably priced and you didn't need to dress up to browse. By the 1980s, Mervyn's had expanded to 200 stores across 10 states. Families made it their go-to spot for everything from work clothes to kids' Halloween costumes. The aisles buzzed with activity, especially during weekend sales when everyone seemed to show up at once. But retail was changing faster than anyone expected. The 2000s brought online shopping and big box stores that could undercut everyone's prices. Mervyn's filed for bankruptcy in 2008, leaving millions wondering where they'd find their next bargain. Yet another small-town anchor was about to face an even sadder fate. From California's family-focused Mervyn's, we head east to Pennsylvania, where another retail story was quietly unfolding in small-town America. Bon-Ton started in 1898 as a tiny shop in York, Pennsylvania. But here's what made them different. They weren't trying to be the biggest or flashiest store in America. Bon-Ton grew slowly through the Midwest, one community at a time. They understood something bigger chains often missed. Small-town shoppers wanted to feel like neighbors, not customers. Store managers knew your name. Sales clerks remembered your kids' sizes from last year's back-to-school shopping. Makes sense, right? Their secret weapon? Community days with those yellow coupon booklets that seemed to multiply in every household drawer. Shoppers would plan entire weekends around these events. The deals were decent, but the real draw was bumping into half your town while browsing the aisles. Well, even friendly service couldn't fight the retail avalanche coming their way. Online shopping hit small-town stores the hardest. Why drive 20 minutes to Bon Ton when Amazon delivered to your doorstep? By 2018, all 250 stores filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy and closed forever. The weird part is how quickly it happened. One day, families were shopping for Easter outfits. The next day, liquidation signs covered the windows. But while Bon Ton was struggling with modern retail challenges, another beloved chain was facing an entirely different battle in the nation's capital. While most department stores fought for space in crowded malls, Hecht took a different approach in Washington, D.C. Founded way back in Baltimore in 1857, this wasn't some flash-in-the-pan retail experiment. These folks had staying power. The real magic happened every December when Hecht transformed its fourth floor into the Christmas Castle. Kids would drag their parents through 3 floors just to reach this winter wonderland. Santa's throne sat surrounded by fake snow, twinkling lights, and enough holiday decorations to make the White House jealous. Parents waited in lines that snaked around entire city blocks, but nobody seemed to mind. Then there was the annual Hecht's Day Parade. While New York had Macy's hogging all the parade attention, Washington families knew where the real fun lived. Local marching bands, elaborate floats, and enough candy thrown from trucks to put dentists on high alert. But here's the weird part. Hecht's window displays became tourist attractions. People planned their downtown shopping trips around seeing what creative scenes the store had cooked up. Department stores today barely change their windows twice a year. Like so many others, Hecht's eventually got swallowed up by Macy's in 2006. All those family traditions, gone overnight. Speaking of family traditions that vanished, there was another store up north in Detroit that took community celebrations to an entirely different level. While Hecht's was charming shoppers in D.C., Detroit had its own retail giant that made everyone else look small. Hudson's wasn't just a department store. It was a straight-up city landmark that could be seen from miles away. The numbers were ridiculous. By 1961, Hudson's flagship store downtown covered 2.2 million square feet across 25 floors. That made it the largest department store in America. Not the biggest chain, mind you, the biggest single store. You could literally get lost in there for hours, and people did. But here's what made Hudson special. They turned shopping into theater. Every December, their 12 Days of Christmas window displays drew crowds that blocked traffic. Families would drive from across Michigan just to see mechanical reindeer dance and toy soldiers march. The windows were so popular that Detroit police had to manage the crowds. Then there was Hudson's Thanksgiving Parade, which started in 1924. Long before Macy's claimed parade fame, Hudson's was rolling giant balloons down Woodward Avenue. They also hosted free concerts and community events that made downtown Detroit feel alive. The weird part is how it all ended. Marshall Fields bought Hudson's in 1982, and by 1983, that massive flagship store was empty. Detroit's downtown heart just stopped beating. But speaking of stores that grew too big too fast, let's talk about a chain that learned this lesson the hard way. Here's the thing about Ames. They weren't trying to be fancy. When they opened their first store in Massachusetts in 1958, their whole approach was refreshingly honest. Clean aisles, decent prices, and everything you actually needed without the bells and whistles. And it worked really well. By the late 1980s, Ames had grown to over 700 stores across the eastern United States. Parents knew exactly what they'd find there. Affordable school clothes that would survive playground fights, notebooks that didn't cost a fortune, and those basic household items you always seem to run out of. The stores felt practical, almost utilitarian, but that was the point. Then came 1988, and Ames made what seemed like a brilliant business move. They bought Zayre, another discount chain with those distinctive orange signs. On paper, it looked perfect. Instant expansion and more market share. But here's where things get messy. Ames tried to digest 400 new stores almost overnight. The logistics became a nightmare. Different computer systems, confused supply chains, and stores that suddenly felt chaotic instead of organized. Customers started shopping elsewhere. The company filed for bankruptcy twice, first in 1990, then again in 2001. By 2002, every last Ames store had closed its doors forever. Sometimes growing too fast becomes the very thing that kills you. Speaking of chains that learned this lesson the hard way. While Ames was struggling with their ambitious expansion plans, another discount chain was already making waves across the eastern United States. Zayre had been busy since 1956, painting the retail landscape with their distinctive orange signs that became as recognizable as McDonald's golden arches. Walk into any Zayre store and you'd immediately notice something different. The open pile displays weren't accidents. They were strategic. Merchandise scattered across tables and bins created a treasure hunt atmosphere that kept shoppers digging for deals. Kids loved rummaging through toy aisles that looked like controlled chaos, while parents appreciated the rock-bottom prices on everything from clothes to housewares. The stores buzzed with activity, especially during back-to-school season when those bright orange sale tags seemed to multiply overnight. Zayre understood something crucial about discount shopping. People wanted to feel like they were discovering hidden gems, not just buying marked-down merchandise. But here's the weird part about retail success stories from this era. Even thriving chains like Zayre couldn't escape the brutal reality of discount retail consolidation. Competition wasn't just fierce, it was cannibalistic. By 1988, Zayre decided to sell their entire chain to none other than Ames, the same company that had been expanding too aggressively for their own good. The merger created a retail giant, but as we'll see next, sometimes bigger doesn't mean better in the discount store world. Ames wasn't done collecting discount chains like trading cards. Their next big acquisition? Zayre, purchased in 1988 for what seemed like a bargain at the time. What they didn't realize was they just bought themselves a one-way ticket to retail disaster. Zayre brought along 392 stores and mountains of debt that would make your credit card company blush. The integration went about as smoothly as mixing oil and water during an earthquake. Different computer systems, conflicting management styles, and employee confusion created the perfect storm of retail chaos. Here's where things get interesting, though. Ames thought they could handle nearly 700 stores across the country. They couldn't even handle their original footprint properly. The rapid expansion stretched their resources thinner than clearance rack fabric, and customer service took a nosedive that would make cliff divers jealous. By 1990, just 2 years after the Zayre purchase, Ames filed for bankruptcy. They managed to crawl back from the dead, reopening in 1992 with fewer stores and supposedly smarter management, but the damage was done. Walmart had grown stronger during Ames's recovery period, and discount shoppers had found new favorites. The company limped along for another decade before filing bankruptcy again in 2002. This time, there was no comeback tour. Sometimes in retail, the biggest bite is the one that kills you. Speaking of retail giants that knew how to bite back, let's head to Connecticut. Atlanta had a secret weapon that made every kid's Christmas unforgettable. Rich's department store didn't just sell stuff, it created magic that lasted generations. Founded back in 1867, Rich's became the heart of Atlanta's holiday season. But here's what made it legendary: a massive Christmas tree that stretched multiple floors inside the store. We're talking about a tree so big it became a tourist attraction. Families would drive hours just to see it. Then there was the pink pig. This wasn't some tiny kiddie ride tucked in a corner. Rich's built an actual monorail system shaped like a pig that carried children around the store's upper level. Kids begged their parents to take them on the pink pig every December. Some adults today still remember the exact feeling of riding that pink train through the store. The downtown Thanksgiving party was another Rich's tradition. Thousands of families would gather for free entertainment, treats, and the official start of Christmas shopping season. It felt like the whole city came together. Rich's understood something most stores missed. They weren't just selling products, they were selling memories. Every November and December, the store transformed into a winter wonderland that made shopping feel like an adventure. But even Atlanta's most beloved store couldn't escape the changing retail landscape that was reshaping American shopping forever. Gold Circle burst onto the retail scene in 1967 with something most shoppers had never experienced before: Picture walking into a store where your purchases got scanned by a mysterious red light instead of manually punched into a cash register. Wild, right? This chain was actually ahead of its time. They became the first retailer in America to use barcode scanners. While other stores were still using those clunky mechanical registers that took forever, Gold Circle customers were breezing through checkout lines like they'd stepped into the future. But the real genius wasn't just the technology. Gold Circle knew exactly who they wanted as customers: college students and young families starting out. Their stores felt modern and clean, nothing like the cramped discount chains of the past. Wide aisles, bright lighting, and organized displays made shopping feel less like a treasure hunt and more like a pleasant experience. Then there's the corporate backing that should have guaranteed success. Federated Department Stores own them, the same company behind Macy's and Bloomingdale's. You'd think that kind of retail muscle would keep any chain alive forever. Yet by the early 1990s, Gold Circle had vanished completely. They merged into the Hills chain we talked about earlier, and both eventually disappeared. What happened? Well, even being first with technology couldn't save them from what was coming next: the absolute retail dominance that would reshape American shopping forever. Lazarus wasn't just another department store in Ohio, it was practically a family member. Founded in 1851 in Columbus, this place had serious staying power. For over 150 years, families planned their biggest shopping trips around visits to Lazarus. The flagship store in Columbus was absolutely massive. We're talking about a building that took up entire city blocks. But here's what made Lazarus special. They were the first department store in America to install air conditioning back in 1934. While everyone else was sweating through summer shopping trips, Lazarus customers were chilling in climate-controlled comfort. And the weird part is, people didn't just go there to buy stuff. Lazarus hosted city parades right down High Street. They threw elaborate fashion shows that turned regular Tuesday afternoons into major social events. The store's Christmas displays were legendary. Families would drive hours just to see the holiday windows. Then there's the community connection that made Lazarus irreplaceable. Store employees knew your name, your kids' sizes, and exactly what dress you wore to your daughter's graduation 3 years ago. Shopping there felt like visiting relatives who happened to sell really nice stuff, but department stores couldn't fight forever. In 2005, Macy's absorbed Lazarus completely. The iconic name disappeared overnight. People genuinely mourned losing that sense of community shopping gave them. These stores shaped how America shopped, socialized, and celebrated together for generations.